that they were starting to lose their ability and their power and their reach amongst the Jews at this point. And so their hope was that they laid a trap for him and hoped that he would possibly say something that allowed them an avenue to create a discourse between him and the believers who started following him. This they said, tempting him, that they might have to accuse him. But Jesus stooped down with his finger, wrote on the ground as though he heard them not. So when they continued asking him, he lifted up himself and said unto them, He that is without sin among you, let him first cast a stone at her. And again he stooped down and wrote on the ground. So in this opportunity, and Jesus Christ, who is Jesus Christ, knowing and perceiving the hearts of men and understanding what they were really setting out for him, didn't necessarily answer their question, but posed to them a question. That if you have not sinned in your own life, then yes, begin the process and stone her. And instead, he said that, and then he just continued doing what he was doing, writing in the sand. And they which heard it, being convicted by their own conscience, went out one by one, beginning at the eldest, even unto the last. And Jesus was left alone, and the woman standing in the midst. One by one they all left. One by one they all felt the conviction in their own heart of the sin that they had done. And they were no more worthy to begin this process and to throw the first stone because of their own sin and their own falling short in their life. And how it came to the point where there's just two individuals left. The woman accused and found in the act of adultery, and Jesus Christ. It says, when Jesus had lifted up himself and saw none but the woman, he said unto her, Woman, where are thine accusers? Hath no man condemned thee? And she said, No man, Lord. And Jesus said unto her, Neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. Now I'm sure in the heart and in the mind of this woman, as she knows what she's done, she knows what she's been found guilty of, and she knows the law, and the law says that she was to be stoned. And there was no disputation among that. I mean, this is what it was. She was caught, stoned. And as she's standing there, I'm sure she's aware and waiting for that moment. Even as the one by one they started to leave, I know if I was in that position, I would still be quite nervous. Not because of those that were left, but because now it's just Jesus Christ and me. And I know right now, if I was in this position and I had committed a sin, Jesus Christ would know more than just that one sin. It wouldn't just be one thing. It wouldn't just be that situation. It would be many. You can read in the scriptures about some of the individuals who had a bit of a scolding from God or from Jesus of the things that they were doing. And oftentimes it wasn't because of the sin that they had done in their own life, but it was because of the sin they had done that were impacting others and leading them away. And as Jesus Christ is now sitting there with the woman, he says, where are thine accusers? Where are those that have brought you here? Where are those that have said you have done this sin? who have caught you in the act, where have they all gone now? She says, they've all left. And Christ says these words, neither do I condemn thee. Go and sin no more. She had every right to be condemned. And we talk about the condition of bringing about a judgment. She had met that condition for the judgment of stoning. It was pretty much 1 equals 1. And yet there's Jesus Christ, who never said that she had done something that she had not committed the sin, but instead cast judgment on her and showed his own avenue of unconditional love. And if you take a look at this simple little, few phrases here, few verses, you see the love that has transpired in the heart of Jesus Christ, that would carry him from this point, and from those points as we learned, and even as he came into this life and began his ministry, and we see the impact that he had and how he was changing lives. He knew that his calling was more than just to change those lives that he had met and that he had interacted with. But he was called for a purpose, that he might go to Calvary, that he might go upon the cross and suffer and give up his life and then resurrect. And he did all these things and all these wonderful stories we read about in the Scriptures. And you can read about his resurrection and his death. And you can read about the things that they had transpired and what they had done to him and how they had scorned him and the things they had set before him. Cast upon him the crown of thorns. How they had whipped him and nailed him to the cross. All these things that were done and that had pointed to that point, had got him to that point and brought him to this place. There was nothing that he had done that caused him to go there. There was no condition. It wasn't 1 equals 1. And we read weeks ago how even they'd said he's an innocent man. Why are we doing this? And yet his own people wanted him to go there. It was all by the plan of God that this might happen. But what brought him there and kept him going and brought him to that cross and kept him on the cross was his unconditional love. Not just for those that had believed upon him, not just for those who were with him at that time, his disciples, his followers. It was for every man, woman, child that was to come, that had come, and was to come. That he loved all and had done all these things regardless of what we would do in our own lives. Regardless of the sin that we would take, regardless of the things that we would do that would put shame upon the name of Jesus Christ, put shame upon his own creation. That he laid these things out because of his unconditional love for each and every one of us. And as I said, I liken that to the love between a mother and their child. There's nothing there that can separate that. You can read in the Scriptures how it talks about all the things that can separate us from the love of Jesus Christ. And if you read it over and over, it goes about all these different things. There's nothing. The only thing that separates us from the love of Jesus Christ is our own acknowledgement that love never occurred. And as a child and a mother, there's nothing that will separate us from that love of our mother, except us acknowledging that that love does not exist. It does. From the mother to the child, from the mother to the son, from the mother to the daughter. But at times we do things in our own lives where we think, they don't love us. Sometimes it's because we don't get the way we want. We don't get the answers we want. We don't see the things in our lives that we think we deserve. At other times it's because I've done so much wrong that there's nothing I can do to bring myself back into the love of my mother or the love of Jesus Christ. And yet we know that that's not the case. Because I know there's one thing that Jesus Christ and God cannot do, and that is to lie. And when Christ said he came for all of mankind, that they might have an opportunity of serving him, experiencing his unconditional love, and receiving salvation and everlasting life, I know he cannot lie. And when he said he loves all of mankind, I know that's not a lie. There's no way he could have done the things that he did, experienced the torment and the pain that he had in his life, had it not been for his unconditional love for each and every one of us. And that's what I think we need to experience in our lives. Now, does that mean that Christ did not judge others? No, he judged. He upheld the things that were to be upheld. But he also provided avenues that all might return into his grace. And if we had just a little bit of that unconditional love that Jesus Christ had used to fulfill the commandments that he was called to do, the impact we would have on this world. Think of the impact that Jesus Christ had on this world. Just one man. With pure love in his heart for all of mankind. And that's what he wants from us. Is to know and experience that love and to share that love. Much like we see between a mother and their children. Nothing can separate that love. It's always present. It's always guiding. And that's the love that Christ has for us. And I thank the Lord each and every day for his unconditional love for me. Because if it was up to me, I'm not sure I could love me, knowing what I put him through. And yet he was willing and is still willing each and every day to accept that. And God bless you.
Good morning. Very much enjoyed the words of my brother this morning, and honestly, I came here this morning with a similar thought on my mind, maybe a slightly different angle than what Brother Josh took it on. I didn't have the thought of unconditional love, that phrase in my mind, but I think I had the essence of it on my mind as well. And I was looking at it, Brother Josh, from a different angle. So you're talking about the condition others are in, right? The condition that you brought yourself in. And I took myself right to the cross, as our brother talked about, thinking of the condition that Christ was in. So Brother Josh, I think, did a great job laying out some of what he went through, right? The crown of thorns, the beatings. I mean, if you really read about what crucifixion was and what he had to go through and everything that led up to that moment, it is horrifying. It is maybe one of the worst things you can imagine. And I know we even talked about that in our Sunday school class last week with the young people, just thinking about the position he was in, the condition that he was in. And you think about in the condition he was in, what he could have been concerned about. right? He could have been concerned about his own comfort. He could have been concerned about the pain he was suffering. And Brother Josh did a great job, I think, laying out, and we heard a few weeks ago on Easter, Brother Dan talked about the love that he had for us, and thinking forward even to this day and time and to everybody that's sitting here today, he had you on his mind. But he even gave examples in that moment. I know last week I shared some of the last words that Christ said when he was on the cross, and he proclaimed it was finished, but some of the other last words that Christ said. You think of all those people that did those things to him. What was his response to them? What did he say to his Father for those people that did the beatings, that put the crown on his head, that scorned him, that shamed him? He said, Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. So even in the condition he was in, he loved them, even though they were the ones who did it to him. And then he gets on the cross and he's hanging next to two thieves, right? And where's his mind at that point? Saying, is he standing there saying, well, I don't deserve to be here, you guys do. Why am I here? He says, no. Today you'll be with me in paradise. Again, in the condition he was in, he loved other people. And then finally, just to tie it into maybe the theme of the day and Mother's Day in general, one of his last words was to his mother. So if you don't know this part of the story, he's on the cross, and it says his mother was there, and his mother's sister, and married. So there's some of the women were there, and if you read through the scriptures, there were always a group of women that followed him. There were his disciples as well. And he looks at his mother in that moment, and he looks at one of his disciples that is there. It's John. And John describes himself here as the one who he loved. So talking about that unconditional love. And he says to his mother, he says, and this echoes the first word to what he said to the woman in John 8, that Brother Josh read, when he said to her, woman, where are thine accusers? He says to his mother, woman, behold thy son. And so I know we talked about it. I talked about it with the young people. They were like, well, that seems a little disrespectful to call his mother a woman, right? But if you actually read into what that word meant at the time, it was a term of endearment. It was almost like saying, dear woman, like, dear mother, is what he was saying in that moment. And he's talking to this disciple, and he's saying, behold thy son. And he turns to his mother, and he says, he says, behold thy son. And he turns to the disciple, and he says, behold thy mother. And so again, even in this last moment, yes, we can say he's caring for his mother, he's showing love towards his mother, and he was. And it's a beautiful thing, right? To think about the earthly mother that he had and showing love towards her and making sure she's taken care of. But I think there's something even deeper here, and that's establishing that idea of a spiritual mother and that family of God that we can celebrate and that we can take part in. On Friday, I think Brother Josh or Brother John said that the young people got up in front of the mothers, and a lot of them shared some different things, whether it was just a few quick words. Some of them we had to coerce to get up there and say something nice about their mother. Not that they didn't think it, but they were just a little shy. And then Brother Dan started calling us up there, and I was like, I didn't know we were part of this. And when I got home that night, and my wife didn't mention this, but I'm surprised she didn't. I didn't mention being thankful for my mother or my wife, the mother of my children. My mind, and it wasn't intentional, my mind in that moment, being put on the spot by Brother Dan, went to my spiritual mothers. And it went to those, and I called out a few people that I grew up with, right? That were my mothers growing up. Whether it was being in their homes with their children, the family of God. Whether it was caring for me in Sunday school classes and teaching me those things. Whatever that might be. But then I stopped and I thought, when I talk about my spiritual mothers, when I talk about mothers in the gospel, I do mean my physical, my birth mother. I do mean my wife, because we are all the family of God. And I think that's what Christ was doing here. I think in this last moment, in the condition he was in, he showed not just unconditional love for the people, but he was establishing that family of God that we all get to be a part of today. To be able to sit here. I mean, I do have relatives, blood relatives in the audience and behind me even, and we celebrate that, and I love my family. It's one of the things that means the most to me. Brother Josh was talking about, if I wasn't going to get paid, would I go to work? There's days that I am going to get paid, and I still don't feel like going to work. But if you ask me where my heart is, it's because it's not there. I mean, I tell people at work sometimes when I'm being a little candid with them, I'm here so I have enough money to provide for my family, so that I can have fun with my children, so that I can give to my church, so that I can go to campouts, things like that. That's the only reason I'm there. It's not for any love for my job or anything like that. But that family, that sense of family, to me, is the most powerful thing that we have. And I think when I sit here on a Mother's Day thinking about that unconditional love, it's not just the unconditional love that my mother has showed me all these years, or that I see my wife providing my children day in or day out. It's for the unconditional love that each of us have for one another. That was what was so powerful to me on Friday. That we were celebrating each other's children. That even when one of our children got up and said, "I love my mom," others felt that love because of the family connections that we have. And Christ even says that in Matthew. There's a moment where he's kind of going back and forth with the Pharisees a little bit, similar to what our brother story he was saying. And at one point, it says as he was talking to the people, his mother and his brother were without, so they weren't really in the room. And they said they wanted to speak to him. And one of the disciples that was with him said, "Behold, thy mother and thy brother, they stand without. They want to talk to you." And he answered, and his answer is, "Who is my mother and who are my brother?" So he kind of challenges them in the moment. He says, "You're thinking natural. I'm going to turn it spiritual." He says he stretched forth his hand, so he looks to his disciples. He says, "Behold my mother and my brother." And he says, "For whosoever shall do the will of my Father, which is in heaven, the same is my brother and sister and mother." So that's what I want to say this morning. Happy Mother's Day, of course, to my mom, to my wife. But happy Mother's Day to each of you. Even the men, happy Mother's Day to you. Because when you do the will of my Father, when you do the will of God, when you come here this morning and you try to do your best, even as we've heard multiple times over the last month at the water shore, promise to serve God to the best of our ability. When we do that, it says the same as his brother and his sister and his mother. So I want you to take that thought with you. I want you, as you leave this place, and even if you go celebrate with your family, to think that when you're doing what God wants you to do, when you're trying to replicate, and we fail, we're never going to live up to the unconditional love that Christ had for us. But when you do your best to show that love unto your family, unto the world around you, know that when you do that will, he's saying, "You're my brother, you're my sister, you're my mother." And being part of that family of God, I think it's just something that is just amazing. Something that I think, growing up in the church, I take for granted. I don't always, maybe treasure that as much as I should. And I'm so thankful for my children to be able to grow up in that as well. But that was where my heart was today. It was on the condition that Christ was in, and yet the love that he showed for us, and that the love that he wanted to establish, using even his mother as a natural example. So may God bless you this morning. We love you very much.
Turn to hymn number 11 in the branch favorites.